Welcome back to the continuing adventures of the monad. For the last 12 presentations, we have been looking at what the Antahkarana is and how to go about constructing it. This is a view set in our time with our current state of group evolution. We never operate in a vacuum. We have our own endeavors, but also those of the group. How far have we come as a collective humanity? And what does this allow us to achieve at the present time? This is going to be different from what was achievable before, in times long past. What are we able to do today is a result of a very and hopefully fruitful series of incarnations. Today, we have a much more scientifically orientated brain that potentially allows us to safely build a bridge that connects the highest to the lowest. What must be grasped is that the Antahkarana and its various components have always been present in the human monad, as it has traversed the fourth kingdom of nature. The various threads we have been talking about may have become active at different stages of our collective evolution, but they have always been present. So, let us look back at our history, jumping back 2 root races to a period known as ancient Lemuria. Some romantics think of the 3rd root race as being some kind of extremely enlightened group of monads that wafted along, emitting light and enjoying the fruits of the Garden of Eden. Nothing could be further from the truth. If you saw a 3rd root racer, they would not be attractive to our eyes, as their features would be coarse and their brain development would be very limited. So, which of the 3 main threads we have been talking about do you think would have been active at this time? It is the Sutratma. It is obvious. You need to be alive, and for that, you need a life thread. This thread animated the physical life expression of the monad, even if its nature was animalistic. The focus of life at this time was on coming into matter, reproducing, and living life through our senses. Think of a dog in heat, and you have the general idea. In fact, humanity at this time got a bit too exuberant, and this led to the eventual destruction of the root race. The hierarchy has a way of calling time, which we may find a little uncomfortable. Fast forward to the 4th root race, known to us as Atlantis. It has 7 sub-races, like all the root races. In the first half of this root race's evolutionary journey, the consciousness thread began to spring to life. This tells us something immediately. The 3rd root race was not really conscious. It was acting out of instinct, hence the dog analogy. The activation of the consciousness thread led to a greater sensitivity of monads incarnated at the time. They were more aware, and rather than just acting out of instinct, they manifested desire. The activation of sensitivity was a prelude to where we are today. If the Lemurian was focused in their 49-1 permanent atom, the Atlantean had moved their focus more into the emotional envelope. They may not have moved their focus to the highest sublevels 48, 2, and 3 just yet, but they were now using their emotional body to drive their activities. Their mental envelope was still fairly quiet. There were exceptions to this state of affairs, but we are talking generally at the moment. Again, it is worth pointing out that the general mass of Atlanteans were not beautiful creatures wandering around in diaphanous robes emitting light from every orifice. Far from it. Think of them more like a collection of 13-year-old teenagers, and you will get their measure. The distinguishing feature of this root race in general was the fact that they were clairaudient and clairvoyant. But then so are cats. Because of their limited mental abilities, they had no internal architecture to interpret what they were contacting. Apparently, they were not able to distinguish emotional plane phenomena from their ordinary physical life. This was especially true for the middle subraces. To put it bluntly, they simply lived and felt. So, we now had two threads functioning, the Sutaratma and the consciousness thread. The third thread was not functioning at all. The bridge was not capable of being built. This puts to bed the notion that some students have that we had a connection that we somehow lost. We never had this connection. Being clairaudient and clairvoyant is no great gift if all you are doing is communicating with a world of fantasy and illusion, without the capacity to understand it anyway. Now, we come to the fifth root race. This is called the Aryan race, which unfortunately has negative connotations today. This is, however, accurate, as this root race was developed by Vaivasvata Manu in a geographical location near the Caucasus. Here was developed a series of tribal groupings. The new kid on the block was the creative thread, the other two already being established in the previous two root races. So, what new party tricks could humanity now perform? The first was that humanity started to activate their mental envelope, and the 47-4 permanent molecule became fully active. Over time, the three aspects of the persona we have already spoken about became more integrated. This led humanity to become aware of the fact that they might have a soul, not realizing that it was actually a solar diva standing in for their soul. Developing the mind is one thing, but activating the creative thread is something more. This was a personal evolution of the monad, not a collective use by the root race. However, the ability to do this was rooted most strongly in the fifth root race. Why do I make this distinction? Because at the start of the fifth root race, in fact, to this day, the majority of monads incarnate are from the fourth root race. They may be functioning with all three threads, but they are more rooted in the developmental stages that were appropriate to the earlier root race. This is why it is stated that this is a personal and not a racial development. Geographically, certain racial groups, the Chinese are a good example, may be predominantly fourth root races. There are, however, many in that community that are actually at the fifth root race stage of development. This is why, especially in Europe and North America, you see much more individualistic behavior in the general population than you see in China. It is only in the last 5,000 years that this individuality has become an outstanding quality in humanity, and that you see creative expression as it was not seen before. If you look at the creative monuments that were built in the third and fourth along with the early fifth root races, we were not the product of the minds of the monad of the time. Certain individuals were impressed by the hierarchy to construct such monuments. This outer impressionability was most prevalent in the last Atlantean and early Aryan periods of our history. Our current creativity is much more a result of the blending of the three threads as humanity starts the process of building its Antahkarana. The reason for going into this historical background is to give a synthetic view of where we are today and the processes we went through as a collective humanity to get there. We were not born in the earlier root races with the creative ability we have today. In the third root race, we were just learning to live in our physical bodies. This is where, in fact, Hatha Yoga was developed, to teach this early humanity how to use their new instrument. So, if you are into Hatha Yoga today, you are a slow learner. Just kidding. Raja Yoga is where you should be now. As a complete aside, I am pretty sure Most of you watching this presentation did not incarnate into this globe till the middle of the Atlantean root race. The whole Lemurian experience was to help those monads that causalized in this chain back to those chains, globes, and rounds. I promise you, I will one day pluck up the courage to tackle that topic fully, rather than just hinting at it. Let's leave it there for today, as what will be said next is a bit technical, and I don't want to stop halfway through it. See you in the next presentation. Thank you.